Houseboat Girl by Lois Lenski. Chapter 1. River Calling. The house was nearly empty now. The rooms looked strange and bare. Patsy picked up a box of dishes and took it out on the porch. She was a pretty girl, with soft brown eyes and blonde hair falling loose on her shoulders. She wore a skimpy cotton dress and a red sweater. "Is Mama coming?" she asked. Patsy stood at the top of the steps and looked. The house and porch were raised high off the ground on 6-foot posts, so she had a good view. Across Front Street and beyond the wide, weedy stretch of the river bank, she could see Daddy's new houseboat. It was floating in the water at the river's edge. The river was the Ohio, and across on the other side she could see the shoreline of Kentucky. It was May, and the river was low. Daddy had started building the houseboat on the bank in April. He bought the hull, a large, heavy barge, from a man upriver. Then he set the framework on it and closed it in. He said it was going to be the biggest and best houseboat of all. Just a little shove from old Garrity's bulldozer had been enough. The houseboat slid down the slick, peeled willow poles on which it had been resting right into the water. Due to the falling river and the slackening current, Daddy was anxious to leave. The people who drove along Ferry Street or Front Street stopped to look. They were very curious, and Patsy got tired of their questions. "What's it for?" they asked. "Buildin' Noah's Ark? Or you gonna put it in the river and go somewhere?" When Daddy told them the Foster family was going downriver, they thought he was crazy, but Patsy knew he wasn't. Patsy remembered Daddy's last houseboat. She was all excited over the new one until the boys and girls at school began to tease her. They started calling her Shanty Girl and River Rat. They said, "Don't fall in and drown yourself," and "Watch out, a garfish will bite you." But school was out now, and Patsy was glad. Both she and her older sister Millie had passed, but Dan was held back. He had to do the second grade over again. Little Bunny was only 5, still a baby. She had never been to school at all. It took a month and 1 day to build the houseboat. Now it was done, and the Fosters were moving in. They were moving all the furniture out of their house on Front Street and putting it in the houseboat. As if a houseboat could ever be a home. Patsy could see Mama now coming back up the dirt river road in Uncle Ed's car. Mama was taking all the small stuff herself, the clothing, cooking utensils, curtains, dishes, and other things. Daddy had borrowed a truck to haul the stove and beds and heavy furniture. It was surprising how much the houseboat could hold. Millie was down there helping to get everything in order. Mama came in the kitchen to get the pots and pans. She was a plump woman, with loose dark hair, dark eyes, and a pleasant smile. She wore a cotton dress and a flowered apron. Patsy followed at her heels. She heard voices out the window and ran to look. There were the Kramer girls and Jenny Cobb coming over. Mama climbed on a chair and started taking things out of the cupboard. "Here, take this," she said, handing one thing down after another. Patsy put the pans and jars and canned goods into boxes and baskets. Patsy called the girls outside. "You can't go now," said Mama. "You stay here and help me. This is my last load. If I can take everything, we can eat on the houseboat tonight." Patsy frowned. She felt almost like crying. She did not like this moving business. "Why do we have to go on the river?" she asked. "Why can't we be like other people and take our summer vacation here?" "You'll like it on the houseboat once we get settled," said Mama. "But the Kramers and the Cobbs don't go on the river," said Patsy. Miss Cobb said people don't live in houseboats anymore the way they used to. Your daddy likes living on the river, said Mama. He's not happy anywhere else. But I like living in town, said Patsy. You'll like the river too, said Mama with a smile. How about going swimming every day? I can't swim, said Patsy. It's time you learn, said Mama. Millie will teach you. Patsy, Patsy, called the girls again. She could hear them giggling beneath the kitchen window. A cat came walking into the kitchen. It sniffed in cracks and corners. There's Aggie's cat, said Mama. Chase it out. Aggie ought to feed it so it would stay home. Can't I take it with me on the trip? Asked Patsy. I'd catch fish every day and feed it. Pushcart Aggie wouldn't thank you for stealing her cat, said Mama. She's got 6 parakeets, said Patsy. She'd not even miss it. Just around the corner by the alley stood an old bus, used as a house trailer. It had dishpans and pots of blooming flowers on its hood, a moon vine growing up over the door, and 2 tanks of bottled gas on the left side. This was the home of old Aggie Stiles and her son. She was called Pushcart Aggie because she pushed a cart and picked up junk to sell. All the children, all the river children, knew her well. She kept her birds in a cage indoors. She loved her cat and scolded the children if they threw stones at it or pulled its tail. Patsy, Patsy, called Jenny Cobb. The girls were waiting on the front steps when Patsy went out. Are you really going down river and never coming back? They asked. Of course we're coming back, said Patsy. Then why don't you leave your furniture here? Asked Alice Kramer. Why, you movin' everything out. We need furniture on the houseboat, said Patsy. We'll cook and eat and sleep there. How can we do it without furniture? But Alice's question disturbed her. In her own short life of 9 years, Patsy had already lived on 4 houseboats. This was the 15th houseboat her father had built. They had all gone downriver and stayed there. Not one of them had come up river again. When you comin' back to River City? Asked Jenny. Patsy hung her head. I don't know, she said in a low voice. The girls could not guess how sad she felt inside. They kept on talking excitedly. Boy, it must be nice to go sailing in a houseboat, said Alice. You goin' all the way to New Orleans? I wish my daddy would build a houseboat, said Fay. We helped your daddy build it, didn't we? Said Jenny. Remember when the storm came and blew it over? Said Alice. Yes, said Patsy. My daddy got his leg hurt when the boards came down on top of him. He got a man to help him put the frame back up. That time he made it so strong, he says the wind can never blow it down again. We carried boards and put them where he told us to, said Fay. We swept it from one end to the other, me and Patsy, said Jenny. Patsy put her arms around her friends, happy in the warmth of their love. They walked around to the backyard. Miss Foster loaded the car and drove to the houseboat. Soon the girls came too, carrying a chicken coop. Several of Patsy's chickens were poking their heads out between the slats. What are you bringing the chickens for? Asked Miss Foster. I told Uncle Ed he could have them. Oh, no, he can't, said Patsy. Daddy told me to take them along. They're my pets, and I've named them all. There's Old Red, Fluffytail, Miss Fuzzy, Shoefly, Miss Cackle, Jenny Brown, Stifflegs, and Fussbox. Daddy came up in the John boat, a rowboat with square ends. He was a tall, wiry man with a thin, weathered face. He wore overalls and a blue shirt and cap. He looked so much like young Abraham Lincoln. He went by the nickname of Big Abe. Patsy's brother, Dan, was often called Little Abe. Daddy turned to Mama. Can't turn a girl loose from everything, he said. Let her keep her pets. There's room for the coop on the cabin boat. "Well, I hope the stupid hens won't fall in the river and get drowned," said Mama. "When they start laying, we'll have fresh eggs to eat, and a roast chicken will make a nice change from fish." "You can have the eggs," said Patsy, "but you can't eat my hens, and they are not stupid. I'm going to train them to go up and down the stage plank." "That girl's strictly a tamer," said Daddy. "She'll train those hens and teach 'em tricks. She can tame a jaybird up on a limb by just looking at it. I never knew anyone like her." On the afternoon before departure, the neighbor women came to see Mama. "See our outfit," Mama pointed. The houseboat was tied to an overhanging willow. On the other side of the tree, Daddy's cabin boat and fish barge were also tied up, ready for the voyage tomorrow. The cabin boat, sometimes called the push boat, was not a boat that could be lived on. It was a heavy barge with a crude cabin over the engine, and it had square ends. It was used at the stern of the houseboat for pushing. It could also pull the houseboat by a tow line. There were also two john boats, one to use as a rowboat and one with an outboard motor and a smaller motorboat. "Can't see why you're leavin'," said Miss Miller. "Mussel shelling's good here in the spring." "It's too hard on a man's back," said Miss Foster. "I hated to see this houseboat go in the river," said Miss Cobb. "As long as it was on the bank, I knew you folks were still here," said Miss Kramer. "Now it's in the water, you'll soon be gone." "Abe can stand a house just so long," said Miss Foster. "Then that old river starts callin' and gives him no peace." "Won't your kids fall in and get drownded?" asked Miss Cobb. "Abe says they are as safe on water as on land," said Miss Foster, "and as safe in deep water as in shallow. He says more people drown in their own bathtubs than in the river." The women talked a while, then one by one went back up the river bank to their homes. Uncle Ed came to take his car, but had to wait until Mama made one last trip to the house. "I like to forgot my wire clothesline and props," said Mama. "Don't know how I could do the family wash without them." When she returned, she brought her curtain stretchers too. Patsy couldn't bear to let the girls go. "Millie's going to teach me to swim this summer," she told them. "In the river," cried Fay Kramer. "I'd be afraid of the garfish. They'll bite your legs off." "Once when I went out fishin' with my daddy," said Jenny Cobb, "the garfish came right up by our boat. They were as long as the boat was. They bit the end of our oars." "Old Garrity and his wife, they like 'em," said Laura Bragg. "She fries 'em, and they eat 'em." "Ugh," said Janie Miller. "I bet they taste terrible." "I'll tell you why Fay hates 'em so," said Alice. "A garfish bit her once. She put her finger in the water, and a mean old garfish bit it." "I'm not afraid of a garfish," said Patsy. "I had one in a tub for a pet once. Don't you remember?" "Oh, you'd keep anything for a pet," Laura laughed. Patsy asked the girls to come and see the houseboat. They came, and she showed them around. "Gee, now that it's all furnished, it's just like a house," said Jenny Cobb. "Sure, why not?" asked Patsy. It was like a house, an oblong box set on the hole in the middle, leaving open porches at the end. Inside, there were 3 rooms. The first was the living room, with a cot in the corner for Dan. The next was the bedroom, with a double bed for Mama and Daddy, and a bunk bed for the girls. Millie slept on top, and Patsy below, and Bunny on the little cot. The third room was the kitchen, with Mama's bottled gas stove for cooking, a cast-iron wood stove for heating, and the large dining table. There were cupboards on the wall with rims on the shelves to keep the dishes from falling off. Mama came back and started hanging flowered curtains on the little windows over the sink. Patsy pulled a chain from a light bulb in the ceiling, but the light did not flash on. "You even got electric lights?" asked Alice. "Sure," said Patsy, "only it's not connected now because we're leaving tomorrow." "And a gas stove?" asked Fay. "Sure," said Patsy. "We got 2 bottles of gas." She pointed out on the back porch. "And running water?" asked Jenny, looking at the sink. "No," said Miss Foster, "only from the river. We'll have to carry our drinking water." "Well, I think it's just as good as a house," said Jenny. The girls went out on the tiny back porch. "Why, look," cried Fay. "That's Paducah right over there. Look how close we are." "Paducah? That's nothing," said Patsy. "Soon I'll be seeing Cairo and Memphis and Vicksburg and New Orleans. Remember all those cities we studied about in geography?" A wide stretch of placid water, the great Ohio River, reached across to the other bank. In the channel over on the Kentucky side, a towboat with a long string of barges was passing, headed downriver. "Look," said Alice, "I bet this houseboat will go faster than that towboat and get to New Orleans quicker." "Yes," said Patsy, "we'll go fast all right. We'll just float along on the current. We won't need any pushing." A long freight train came across the river from Kentucky on the railroad bridge high overhead. It made a deafening noise and threw a cloud of black smoke down into the river valley. The girls could not talk until it had passed. "Come on," cried Patsy. "Let's play tag. Try and catch me." Narrow walks, called guards, on the 2 sides of the houseboat connected front and back porches. Patsy ran round to the front porch, the girls at her heels. Round and round they ran, but Patsy was too fast to be caught. "Girls," called Miss Foster out the window, "do be careful. Don't be running around on the guards all the time. If you fall in, the river won't stop for you. It'll carry you on where it's going. Not one of you knows how to swim, and I don't either, so I can't pull you out." She spoke too late. Suddenly there was a great splash. Miss Foster looked out. There was Jenny Cobb in the river, splashing wildly and screaming at the top of her voice. "Hush up, Jenny," called Miss Foster. "You're not drowned. The water's only up to your knees." "I'll save you, Jenny," called Patsy. Patsy found an oar and held it out to Jenny. The other girls took hold and they all pulled. Soon they brought the dripping Jenny up on the porch. "My mother will have a fit," said Jenny. She and the other girls ran up the river bank, and Patsy went with them, even though she heard her mother say, "Supper's ready." The rest of the family sat down to eat without her. It began to grow dark. "Where's the girl gone?" asked Mama. "Abe, you'll have to go look for her." "No need," said Daddy. "Here she comes now." With hair flying, Patsy came running down the hill and over the hill and over the stage plank. She carried something in her arms, but she did not come into the kitchen. She stopped in the bedroom. "What's that you've got?" asked Millie. "Mama, she's hiding something under the bed covers." The children came in to look. "It's moving," said Dan. "Meow, meow." A faint cry could be heard. "Patsy, where have you been?" asked Mama sternly. I went." The girl was still out of breath. "I wanted to say goodbye to the girls." "Where have you been?" asked Mama again. "I wanted to say goodbye to Aggie," Patsy began. "Is that her cat?" asked Mama. "Did you steal it?" Millie threw the bed cover back, and a small cat appeared. It was black with a white throat. It had 3 black feet and 1 white one. It meowed again. Patsy picked it up and hugged it. "No, Mama, honest," said Patsy. "Aggie gave it to me for a going-away present." "Patsy," cried Mama, "is that Aggie's cat?" Daddy spoke up. "Let her keep it. She's got to have her pets." "But if it's Aggie's cat—" Little Abe settled the matter. "It's not that old cat of Aggie's. It's one of the kittens. Aggie was trying to give them away." "All right, then," said Mama. Patsy looked up with her most bewitching smile. "She really did give it to me to keep. 4 kids on a boat is enough without a cat," said Mama. "Let her keep it," said Daddy. Patsy smiled and hugged the kitten close. Chapter 2. Down the River. Patsy woke up early the next morning and wondered where she was. Then she remembered. They had slept on the houseboat. The motor in Daddy's cabin boat was roaring loudly. The cabin boat was pushing the stern of the houseboat. Daddy was getting ready to go. Patsy jumped out of her bunk. She ran to the porch in her pajamas. Bunny and Dan were still in bed, fast asleep. The roar of the motor stopped. It was still dark. The river was as quiet and peaceful as a lake. Nothing was stirring. Not a single bird, not a leaf on a tree. A dawn hush was over everything. Only a glow of pink showed in the east. Again, the loud roar of the cabin boat motor broke the stillness. "Come, Patsy," called Mama. "Come and eat breakfast." Patsy smelled bacon and went to the kitchen. Mama and Daddy and Millie had eaten. Millie liked to think that she was grown up. She was out in the cabin boat with Daddy helping. She always said she had to work like a boy. It seemed strange to be eating down below the river bank, above the slope of weeds and grass. Patsy could just barely see the tops of her house and of the others on Front Street. Were the Kramers and the Cobbs getting up now too? Was Pushcart Aggie eating breakfast or feeding her birds? Would Jenny and Fay soon come flying down the hill to say goodbye? Mama brought bacon and egg and set it down before her, but Patsy could not eat. She tried a biscuit and it nearly choked her. She pushed back her chair and went in the bedroom to dress. When Mama called her, she said, "I'm not hungry." Then, before she knew it, they were out in the river. Daddy had let go the lines and pushed off. "This is some outfit we've got." Mama stood on the porch with her hands on her hips. "A fish barge, a cabin boat, a houseboat, a small motorboat, and 2 john boats. People will think there's a towboat coming." But Patsy did not listen. Why didn't the girls come? Weren't they up yet? Didn't they want to say goodbye? Didn't they know she was going down the river? Even Mama didn't care. She was clearing up the breakfast dishes, just as if they were still in their old house on Front Street. Nobody cared but Patsy. The girl stood on the little porch and looked back. The river breeze blew her blonde hair off her shoulders, and there was sadness in her eyes. She watched the tops of the houses until they disappeared. Then the houseboat went round a bend, and the little town of River City, Illinois, was gone. Patsy slumped to the floor and leaned back against the wall. She held the black kitten in her lap and patted it. "You feelin' sick?" asked Mama. "No," said Patsy, "I'm all right." Mama went away and left her. The river world was different. The minute you got out on the river, the high banks flattened out. The river was a world of water with a low shoreline on both sides. All familiar landmarks disappeared. The houseboat went under the high railroad bridge, and soon it, too, was gone. It crossed over to the channel on the Kentucky side. The river was so wide here it was like being on the ocean. Now they were cut loose from the bank for good. It was different from being in a boat. because now they had their home right with them. When you went out in a boat, you could always come back to your home on the river bank, but in a houseboat you took your home with you, so there was no coming back. It was 2 years since they had lived in Daddy's last houseboat, but Patsy remembered just how it was. She remembered the one before that, too. Patsy Foster was a river girl. She was born in the middle of the Mississippi River. Mama often told her that. Mama told her so often she got tired of hearing it. She liked the river, of course. She liked the river. The river and fish and floods and rain and mud were a part of her life. Everybody who lived on the river liked it. Daddy always said that once you had a drink of river water, you could never get away from the river. Patsy liked many things about the river, but she didn't want to live on it all her life. She liked a house in town, too. The worst thing about the river was that it was always calling you, always taking you away from the friends you made in town. You had to like it whether you wanted to or not. That was the bad thing about a river. Sooner or later it got a hold on you. Patsy made up her mind. She was going to hate it this time. Oh, come and look, Patsy. Bunny and Dan were up now. They were on the front porch calling. Here comes a big tow, cried Bunny. Here comes a towboat with 50 barges, called Dan. Patsy walked slowly round on the guard till she came to the front porch. I've seen towboats before, she said, dropping down on the leather couch. The couch was an old auto seat that Daddy had rescued from a wrecked car. She cuddled the black cat in her arms. It's only got 12 barges, Dan, said Patsy. Can't you count yet? Millie stood out front and signaled to her daddy behind in the cabin boat, but he had already seen the towboat coming before it gave 2 toots of its whistle. First came the oil barges, 4 rows of 3 abreast, then the towboat which was pushing them upriver. The houseboat could not get too far away without leaving the channel. The deckhands all came to look. They acted as if they had never seen a houseboat before. They called and waved, and the children waved back. Well, boys, called Mama, how do you like this stylish outfit of ours? Where you goin'? Called Dan. Stop and take me with you. What you cookin'? Called Millie. I smell something good. They holler just as if they know us, said Patsy, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. Patsy thought of the friends she had left behind. What friends could a girl make on the river? Only the deckhands on a passing towboat who waved and shouted and then were gone. Deckhands who would never be seen again. When those big tows come along, it worries me, said Mama, because I don't swim, and I know Daddy couldn't save all of us. Who's fallen in? Millie laughed. Remember, I can swim too. Millie went around in shirt and jeans like a boy, except for the earrings in her ears. She tied her hair back with a string, except when she curled it. She liked to boss the younger children. Watch out, kids, she called. The waves are coming. Abe Foster was ready. He steered the houseboat at an angle to meet the oncoming waves. Up and down rocked the houseboat, while the children staggered about, trying to keep their balance. Loud thumps could be heard indoors, followed by cries from Mama. A lamp slid off a shelf and some dishes fell. A chair was knocked over. Then the towboat, moving swiftly, passed around a bend and was gone. Suddenly a hen began to cackle close at hand. Patsy jumped up. Her chickens, she'd forgotten all about them. She ran quickly and jumped over to the cabin boat. She fed and watered her pets and talked to them for a while. She promised them a run on the river bank whenever Daddy tied up for the night. She came back and slumped on the couch again. Bunny and Dan started a game of jacks on the floor. The houseboat had straight going now for 7 miles. The river was wide and flowed northwest to the Joppa Lights. Patsy felt tired and lazy, for there was nothing to do, no games to play, no places to go, no friends to see, nobody but her own family. She was cut off from everything and everybody. She watched the clouds floating by overhead. Now and then she saw a bird on the wing. Then she must have dozed off to sleep. After a time she was roused by Dan's shouts. "The locks! We are coming to the dam and the locks!" This must be lock and dam number 53, above Olmsted. That meant they had passed Joppa already. The river was very wide here. There were mussel beds between Joppa and Grand Chain, and a good many mussel diggers were out. Their boats, with brails hung close with hooked lines, were scattered out over the river outside the channel. Mama came out on the porch and sat down. She took Bunny on her lap. "No more shell digging for Daddy," she said. "I'm glad of that." "But how will he make money then?" asked Patsy, "to buy food for us to eat and clothes to wear?" "Don't you worry," said Mama. "Your Daddy's the best fisherman on the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. We'll make out all right." Then Millie was out front, pointing and shouting to Daddy back in the cabin boat. They were coming close to the locks. Patsy jumped up to see. Going through the locks was exciting. The gates had already been opened. Patsy heard the lockmen shouting to Daddy. They told him how many feet the drop to the lower level would be. It was a long, slow process getting Daddy's outfit in and the gates closed behind. Then the drop began. Daddy's motor was shut off, and it was very quiet in the locked chamber. Down they went, with the walls rising higher and higher on both sides. It was like going down in an elevator. "Oh boy, this is fun," cried Patsy. But Bunny got scared. She ran indoors and hid under Mama's bed, crying. Patsy went to coax her out, but she would not come. Then, at last, outside, the lower gates began to open, and they could see the lower level of the river ahead. Daddy started his motor and began pushing the houseboat out through the gates. "Come on out, Bunny," coaxed Patsy. "We are through the locks now." Bunny came and hid her face in Mama's apron. "I couldn't see anything under the bed," she said. "Under the bed is a good safe place to hide." Mama patted the little girl on the back. "I don't like the locks either," she said. After the lock excitement, there was nothing much to see. The banks on both sides were low and far away. There were no towns on the Kentucky side from Paducah all the way to the Mississippi River. The day wore slowly on. A diesel towboat hauling coal from West Virginia caught up with the houseboat and went on ahead. Mama cooked dinner, and then Bunny and Dan took naps. Patsy got tired of the kitten, found Dan's harmonica, and played for a while. Mama took up a batch of mending. Millie came in complaining of a headache. Patsy decided to go fishing. She climbed up on the houseboat roof and brought down a pole and line. She baited her hook with a piece of fat. Then she sat down on the porch floor and threw out her line, but nothing happened. No fish came to bite. All at once her fish pole fell out of her hand into the water. It floated beside the hole. Patsy held on to the porch post with her hand, leaned out, and stretched her leg out over the water toward the pole. "Oh, Patsy, don't," called Mama, "don't do that." But the girl had already caught the fish pole between her bare toes and was hauling it up on deck. "What's the matter?" she asked Mother. "Oh, you make me so nervous," said Mama. "Looks as if you're just determined to fall in." "Are there no fish at all in this old river?" asked Patsy. "Too many dams on the Ohio and too little current," said Mama. "Wait till we get to the Mississippi. It's plumb full of catfish and scalefish, too." "When will we get there?" asked Patsy. To her surprise, she found a large jumping fish on her line. "Tomorrow, maybe," said Mama. "Where are we going to stay tonight?" asked Patsy. "At Mound City," said Mama. "We'll go visit Uncle Fred this evening. Can't pass by with Uncle Fred looking for us." The sun was already setting when the Fosters reached Mound City, Illinois, a real river town with an active boatways on the waterfront. Daddy tied up in a small cove to one side. He came in the kitchen to wash the oil and grease off his hands and face and to change his clothes. The minute the boat stopped, the children rushed to the bank. It seemed good to be on land again. "You'd think they'd just crossed the ocean," said Mama. Patsy put a plank from the cabin boat to the bank. She shooed her chickens out of their coops and up on land, but it was getting dark and they did not want to go. So she sprinkled corn on the plank to coax them back in again. They seemed to know that the coop was their home. They did not like the strange river bank. Then Uncle Fred was there with his loud booming voice. He took all the Fosters in his car to his house up in town. They ate supper at Uncle Fred's, played games for an hour with the cousins, and then Uncle Fred brought them back again. Already the houseboat had begun to seem like home. Soon they were all asleep in their beds. Tom, the cat, curled up at Patsy's feet. The river water lapped lazily around the hole, and the moon rose over the wide expanse of the Ohio River. All was peace and quiet in the Foster houseboat. The next morning Patsy was up early. She put on a t-shirt and blue jeans and went out to the cabin boat. She talked to Daddy while he tinkered with the motor. "It won't take long to get to Cairo," said Daddy. "Then we'll be on the Mississippi." "That's a mean old river, I guess," said Patsy. "Everybody says so," answered Daddy with a laugh. "But it's not so bad when you know it. There are plenty of things to cause trouble: wind, pile dikes, tricky currents, snags, and sandbars. And there's nothing worse than meeting a toe in a tight bend. The trouble with that old river is it wiggles too much." Patsy laughed. She felt safe with Daddy. Daddy could not read a book because he had never been to school, but he could read the river like a book. Born in Kentucky, he had lived on the river all his life. He knew every bend and sandbar and buoy and navigation light. He knew that every rifle, eddy, or slick meant before he came to it. He knew all the crossings without need of the buoys, and he never used a map. "Will we stop at Cairo, Daddy?" asked Patsy. "We might go to the boat store," said Daddy. "I need more rope and other supplies." Suddenly Patsy heard a motorboat coming. Around the bend, a man appeared in an outboard jomboat. Above the sound of the motor, his loud whistling could be heard. Daddy stopped work and looked up. "Well, I'll be jiggered," he said. "If that's not whistling Dick, I'll jump in the river." I'd know his whistling a mile off. The next minute the two men were shaking hands. The man was not a stranger at all, but an old friend of the Fosters. He had a cheerful smile and wore his breeches with the legs rolled up. He patted Patsy on the back and came over to the houseboat for breakfast. Mama was glad to see him too. "Dick, you're a part of the scenery," said Mama. "Every time we go up or down the river, we see you somewhere." "And this is little Abe," said Whistling Dick. "A chip off the old block, I could see." "Are you the man that never stops whistling?" asked Dan. Whistling Dick laughed. "Yes, little Abe," he said. "My whistle never runs dry. When I get tired of whistling, I sing." He started singing "Pop Goes the Weasel" in a loud voice. Dan began to march around the table, trying to whistle the tune. "Are you fixin' to go shellin', Dick?" asked Abe Foster. "Yes," said Whistling Dick. "I been on the Cumberland all winter. Got my houseboat beached up there, but the river will soon be getting low, and there's no fish left in it. So in the summer I always come over to Illinois. I got me a little cabin back up here on the river bank, with a cooking vat and some brails and hooks. I'll soon be sellin' mussel shells." "You can have 'em all, and the pearls too," said Abe Foster. "I'm tired of that job, luggin' them heavy shells up the river bank like to broke my back." "We are off down river now on a summer vacation. There's still plenty of catfish left in the Mississippi." "Watch out, catfish," cried Whistlin' Dick. "Big Abe Foster's comin'." The men began to brag about their big hauls of fish. Patsy wondered who was the better fisherman, her father or Whistling Dick. Soon he said he had to be going. Patsy held the cat in her arms as she watched him get in his boat. She waved goodbye and could hear his cheery whistle long after he was out of sight. "Daddy says we might stop at Cairo," said Patsy. "Good," said Millie. "We'll go uptown and do some shopping. I want to get me a pair of high-heeled shoes." "High heels," Mama laughed. "On the river you'll all go barefoot." Soon the houseboat was in the river again. Now there was something to look forward to, the big city of Cairo. Everybody called it Cairo, not Cairo. Like the capital of Egypt, it seemed a long time since the Fosters had left River City, a long time since Patsy had left her friends. She had other things to think about now. As they neared the city, there was more traffic on the river, dredges and towboats and barges and motorboats. Soon the sky was darkened by city smoke, and ahead lay the railroad bridge across the Ohio. There were two other highway bridges out from Cairo, one from Illinois to Kentucky and the other from Illinois to Mississippi. "Is this Cairo?" asked Patsy. "I don't see any town. I thought it was a great big city." "It's big enough," said Mama. "Back up behind that wall, it's bigger than River City, but not as big as Memphis." The city was circled by a concrete flood wall that rose up from the river like the ramparts of a walled town. Cairo's local location was a dangerous one, locked between two mighty rivers, with the Ohio on one side and the Mississippi on the other. The city had had to protect itself from innumerable floods and annual high water. Hence the great sea wall was built of concrete. Abe Foster came to a place where there was a sloping rock wall, which might have been a former steamboat landing. He edged the houseboat in and tied up. Millie had on her good dress, ready to go to town, but Daddy said no, there wasn't time. The sky had become cloudy, and he was afraid of rough weather ahead. "I'll get my rope and supplies at the boat store and be right back," he said. "I want to get down to Wycliffe early. There's a good harbor at the mouth of Mayfield Creek." "Buy us a book of river maps," said Mama. "Who wants a map?" asked Daddy. "I can't read it." "Well, I can," said Mama, "and I like to know where we're going." Millie took off her good dress, disappointed, when Daddy came back with the rope. He brought the big yellow book of lower Mississippi River maps, put out by the United States Army of Engineers. He tossed it into Mama's lap, and Mama got out her glasses to look at it. Patsy looked too. Map number 1 showed Mound City and Cairo. Patsy followed their day's course with her finger. She found Wycliffe and Mayfield Creek a few miles below. Soon the houseboat was moving again, drifting lazily on the current, no power needed. The clouds had lifted a little, and the river was still placid. The Fosters passed by a group of shanty boats, some beached in a grove of cottonwoods and others afloat along the river bank. They came to Cairo Point, where towboats and dozens of barges were tied up. Cairo Point was a towboat terminal. Here, barges of coal, grain, and minerals were transferred to other routes for continued hauls up or down the Mississippi, Missouri, Illinois, or Ohio rivers. "Where does the Ohio River end and the Mississippi begin?" asked Patsy. "How can you tell?" "The water from the Missouri is yellow and muddy," said Mama. "It brings a lot of mud with it and dumps it into the Mississippi above St. Louis. The Missouri has always been called the Big Muddy. The Ohio just flows gently into the Mississippi, then gradually the water gets muddier and the current swifter, and you know you are in the Mississippi." The sky grew cloudy again, and then began to notice the change. The river was no longer the placid Ohio. Driftwood sailed past on a speedier current. The wind began to blow up choppy waves. Daddy stayed in the cabin boat behind, controlling the course of the houseboat. He had to steer carefully along the dangerous Wycliffe shore. Mama and Patsy kept on studying the river maps. Patsy saw that all the islands were numbered, starting at Cairo and going south. "I'm going to count all the islands as we go along," she said. "That'll be a hard job," said Mama. "Many of them are missing. Some are washed away or joined to the mainland. The river keeps changing its banks all the time, but the state lines never change." Daddy seemed to know where he was going without looking at a map. Before long, he nosed the boat into a little cove at the mouth of Mayfield Creek, below Wycliffe. Just in time, too. The lines were all made fast, and Daddy was washing up on the back porch when the downpour came. It made a heavy tattoo on the flat tar paper roof of the houseboat. Mama had a pot of coffee on the stove and had started supper. She fixed baked pork and beans, mashed potatoes, and iced tea. The houseboat rocked on the waves, but it was snug and cozy inside. It felt just like home.